All right. Shabbat Shalom. We are back. We want to continue with our look through Bereshit. We actually left off at the end of chapter 30 last week. I think because of what's going on in the story, I want to pick up at the end of 30 and then go into 31 for this week, just to kind of keep the narrative going. We want to look at 31. Last week we talked about Rachel and comparing ourselves to Rachel. But this week, what I want to do is look at Yaakov and see how he is dealing and moving, and see what we're able to learn from the way that he acts. So we want to talk about today in chapter 31. We want to deal with the idea of being who you are, being who you are. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Genesis 30. We're going to read from 25 through.
You said 31 or just
Well,
30, right?
Yeah, we're going to read Genesis 30, verse 25 through the first two verses of the next chapter.
Okay.
You can just stop at 31, verse 2.
Verse 2. Okay.
But start at Genesis 30, verse 25.
Okay. And it came to be when Rachel bore Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way to go to my own place and to my land. Give my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you yourself know my service, which I have done for you." And Laban said to him, "If please, have found favor in your eyes. Stay, for I have divined that Yahweh has blessed me for your sake." And he said, "Name me your wages, and I will give it." So he said to him, "You know how I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. For the little you had before I came has increased greatly, and Yahweh has blessed you since my coming. But now, when I am to provide for my own house too." And he said, "Why don't I give you?" And Jacob said, "Give me not. If you do this for me, I shall again feed and guard your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the black ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And these shall be my wages. And my righteousness shall answer me in time to come, when you come concerning my wages. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, it is stolen if it is with me." And Laban said, "See, let it be according to your word." And on that day he set aside the male goats that were speckled and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the black ones among the lambs, he gave them into the hands of his sons. And he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. And Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and the chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, and they conceived when they had came to drink. The flocks, the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face towards the streak, and all the black in the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves, and did not put them before Laban's flock. And it came to be, whenever the strong ones of the flock conceived, and Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the flock in the gutters, so they would conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were weak, he did not put them in. So the weak ones were Laban's, and the strong ones Jacob's. Thus the man increased very much, and had many flocks, and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Chapter 31. And he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father, he has made all this wealth. And Jacob would look at the face of Laban and see that it was not toward him as before.
Okay, let's stop right there and talk about what's going on a little bit over here. Just starting over here, we'll go back um, and deal with it. But when we look at verse 2 over here, where it says, and Jacob would look at the face of Laban and see that it was not toward him as before. I don't know exactly what Jacob is talking about over here, because I don't know when Laban's face was actually toward him. When we look at the actions of Laban and how he deals with him, throughout their relationship together, it always seems to be self-serving. And as far as Laban is concerned, it seems, at every turn, Laban is taking advantage of Yaakov. It seems that there is, to me, when I look at it, it seems like there's a little bit of disillusionment when we look at, what it is that he's saying over here when he's talking about this idea of Yaakov will look at the face of Laban and see that he is not toward him as before. Like, I don't know what he means when he says as before, because I can't think of a time when it was there, his face was towards him. So let's just real quick look at this here. The scriptures version says to see that it was not towards him as before, his face. It kind of makes a whole almost paragraph over here, but this word, let's see here, we need this countenance is what we look at here. Oh, it's translated as face. To look at the face of Laban, behold the countenance. Countenance is, I want to look at this word study version. It says a masculine plural noun meaning a face. Although the literal meaning of face is possible, most of the time this word occurs in a figurative idiomatic phrase. face can be the substitute for the entire person, or it can be a reflection of a person's mood or attitude, whether it be defiant or ruthless or joyful or humiliated, terrified, or displeased. It is also used to indicate direction or purpose. This noun also designates the top or surface of something, the ground. This kind of is in depth kind of a definition. But when we think about, for instance, where it talks about the Most High having his face towards us, um, that is always kind of a thing where it's kind of a relationship that is, is solidified. It's always kind of a positive thing where we're receiving the mercy of the Most High. A good example to think about is the Aaronic blessing. We look at the Aaronic blessing, Numbers chapter 6 at the end, where it says, Yahweh bless you and guard you, make his face shine upon you. Make his face shine upon you and show favor towards you. These things are connected. This whole idea of favor being showed to you and his face shining upon you, his countenance. Literally, when we think about the countenance of the Most High, we're talking about his character, his glory, his his goodness being manifested on you. And so when we think about the idea of someone's face being turned toward you, it's about goodness. So when we think about Laban and his face being turned towards Yaakov, again, I'm not sure when when his favor was turned towards him, because even if we look even from the very beginning of their relationship, let's see if I put those verses in there. When we look at the very beginnings of their relationship, it starts off in a way that is just, it is Genesis 29. Let's look back at Genesis 29. Because to me, let's see, where is it? 15. Let me read verse 15.
Oh, then Laban said to Yaakov, because you are my relative, you should therefore serve me for naught. Let me know what should your wages be.
They come together. They have this meeting. Yaakov is has his eye on one of Laban's daughters, and really the first things that Laban is talking about is servitude and wages.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like, I don't get the connection here. Because you are my, he says, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me? I feel like he's saying these things, like he says one thing, but the way that he acts is like a whole otherness situation. Mm-hmm. Like, we're related, so I ain't gonna have you working for nothing. But when you think about what he's actually doing, he kind of is working for nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about, whenever we went over this, the whole idea of the bride price, and we came up with 50 shekels. Mm-hmm. Which in the context of 7 years is really kind of a minute amount of money.
In comparison, yeah.
So we talk about the idea of Laban, doing this so-called favor uh, for Yaakov, not letting them just work for free. But in all actuality, I feel like he's kind of working for free, like,
Mm-hmm.
and he definitely did, because the thing that they agreed upon, they didn't ever even he didn't even get that.
Right.
He was supposed to have been working for Rachel for 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't even get that. So even if we was to say that 7 years was a reasonable thing, he didn't get what he wanted for 7 years. It took him 14 years in order to even get it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I'm saying when I look at this whole thing about Yaakov and him saying about Laban not having his face turned towards him as he did before. I feel like he's just being nice about the whole situation.
Exactly, yeah.
Or it's just disillusionment. Like, when was he nice? I don't know. I don't know when he was nice. I don't.
Right.
I can't tell based on what's going. What the narrative is, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we look back at Genesis 29, we look at 29 verse 27. 29. Oh, my fault. 30 verse 27. Oh, okay. When Laban said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay." For I have diligently watched that Yahweh has blessed me for your sake. This don't got nothing to do with Yaakov right here when he's talking about staying.
Mm-hmm. He was loving his work he was doing for him. He was loving that.
The blessings that he was receiving as a result of Yaakov being there.
Yeah. His labor. I was blessed with a good servant of you. So,
you able to do all of these things that you doing with these edibles and all of this, and you doing all of this work for all of these years, and I'm reaping the benefits. Please, stay.
Yeah. You trying to go now? Like, you don't want to stick around a little longer?
I'm prospering. I'm doing good.
Yeah. What can
the
I
Most
do?
High's blessing me for your sake. He even knows that it ain't for his own sake.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just saying, like, Laban, I don't really know what to say about Laban. He's not really giving us no kind of redeeming qualities in terms of being able to look towards him and kind of see any type of exemplary behaviors, because his actions seem to be mostly self-serving, and against literally against Yaakov. And then when he's ready to leave out, Laban is like, it's a thing, right? So let's keep on reading down here, because let's look at verses. Let's go back to 31 here. Let's go back to 31 and read 3 through 9.
He always said to Yaakov, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives. I am with you. And Yaakov sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock, and said to them, I see your father's face, that it is not toward me as before, but the Elohim of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, and yet your father has deceived me with charge or and changed my wages 10 times. But Elohim did not allow him to do evil to me. When he said this, the speckled uh, are your wages, and all the flocks bore speckled. And when he said this, the streak of your wages, then all the flocks bore streak. So Elohim has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me.
Okay, very good. So something that we're able to see when we look at Yaakov, that I wanted to draw attention to was, in spite of the fact of what we see, the way that we see Laban treating him. We see that Yaakov is saying what he's saying in terms of this whole idea of your father's face that is not towards me as before, as if to say there was a time when it was towards him. But along with that, we're able to recognize that Yaakov recognized that the Elohim of my father has been with me. And so I'm saying that in spite of how he's being treated by Laban, we're able to see that Yaakov is able to, it's almost as if it's not phasing him, his current situation, so much so that he don't even, it's not even a thing to him that the way that he's being dealt with. When us on the outside looking at it, it seems like it's a bad thing. Like,
yeah, he just like taking it, not reacting, but it's in the back of his mind. He going. He got plans. Like,
I mean, yeah. So I, there's many things that's going on when we look at this. One of the things that we see definitely is that the fact that him being concentrated on the Most High is causing him to be able to kind of deal with his reality in a different way. Because, we're seeing like in verse 7 where it talks about the fact that, your father deceived me and changed my wages 10 times.
Right. So he was counting. He was paying attention. He was,
10 times he switched up on me. But he says Elohim did not allow him to do evil to me. That seems evil to me when you switching up the wages, right? When we think about like, we can look back hindsight and think about, honest weights and measures is Torah, right? That's Torah. We're talking pre-Torah over here, but principally, it got to be something that's in place, right? So to be doing this thing, whatever he's doing with this here changing of wages thing, that's wickedness, right? But Yaakov ain't looking at it though. He's not really dealing with that, right? He's dealing with the Most High, because even though he makes these agreements and things with Laban, the Most High is dealing with Yaakov. Kind of, they got their own thing going on, which counters this thing that's going on with Laban. And it's when you look at kind of the normal characteristics of these animals, this thing is actually quite rare. It's actually quite rare to have these speckled and streaked animals like this. And so for Laban to even agree to that is wicked in and of itself. For him to sit up there and say, well, yeah, whatever ones is because they're usually like a certain color,
Exactly.
and that's what they are.
He's like, oh, he ain't really asking for nothing. It's all right.
Yeah, right.
Yaakov
He's
is-
just all with it.
But and it's in his name too. Yaakov's a planner, so he was like, you know what? All right,
And it seems as if now it seems like the Most High has given him kind of this strategy
mhm.
to make this thing that Laban agreed upon, to make it fall in the favor of Yaakov, where he's doing this thing with these rods and stripping them and what all of this elaborate stuff that he's doing, and strengthening these certain animals to cause them to be more plenteous, and the other ones not. Like, he's getting these kind this secret wisdom to be able to do these things with these animals, and for those things to be working out in his favor. And even when we see in verse 9, it says, so Elohim, it says, has taken away the lives of your father and given them to me. The Most High is the one that's doing it, right? But what I wanted to actually look at here and bring out is the fact that I feel like the key is the fact that Yaakov is able to focus his attention on the Most High in spite of what is actually going on. And this is the thing that's kind of getting him through, where he's looking at the situation and calling it something else when it's clearly something that's going on, that's going against him. But he ain't even looking at it like that, because he's able to focus on the Most High. I want to look at let's see, Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 6. Read Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 6. Hold on. Yeah.
Know him in all your ways, and he makes all your paths straight.
Okay, very good. So this word here, know him in all your ways, and he make your paths straight. So I'm gonna look at this here. Paths, which is Orach. Orach. Let's look at this here. Orach. Orach is a well-trodden road. A well-trodden road. When I think about a well-trodden road, something for me that comes to my mind is kind of a personal kind of a thing over here. Over around the corner from me, it used to be, it's like something else now, but it used to be a grocery store. And on the way to the grocery store, like there's 2 streets behind it, there was this well-trodden path that went from the one street from Amanda to the alley that was beside Foodland. I don't know if you remember when that Foodland was right up there on Arlington. So many people walked from Amanda to Foodland that there was like a little foot trail that was there. No grass ever grew there anymore. It just went all around. It was grass. But where that foot trail was, where people would walk in the grass to go from the one street to the other, was this well-trodden road, where it just turned into a path from going that one way all the time. And so when we think about this idea with Proverbs 3 and 6, where it says, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. So we have the idea of you acknowledging him in all of your ways, first of all, not just some of your ways, but in all of your ways, acknowledging. What's that say in the King James? Oh, it says that. In the King James, it literally says in all of your ways. literally saying all, what's that? Kol, which literally means the whole.
Mhm.
It literally means all right there. So in everything that you do, when you acknowledge him, then he's not going to just direct you in some of the things that you do. Right?
Right.
He's going to direct you in all of the things that you do. And the word that he's using over here, where it says it directs your path, it's giving you that idea of this place where you always are, right? This well-trodden road, this place that you frequent, like this is the way that you go. And he's saying, in all of the ways that you go, when you acknowledge me in all of your ways, I'm going to direct these paths. And so we can see, when we look back at what Yaakov is doing over here, we can kind of see why he has this attitude that he has, because, you know, in spite of what is being done to him, he's able to look at his situation differently, because he's looking to the Elohim of his father to get through this situation. Even when we think back to the fact that whenever he was able to get Rachel over his time, it says that it seems as if it was just a few days, the time that went past, when it was years.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he able to say that? Just because of her beauty and all of these things? And I don't know, maybe. But I would like to think that the reason that he's able to get through these situations is the fact that he's able to look towards the Most High and have that kind of a surety of what the Most High is able to do for him to get him through these situations over here.
Yeah, it's like his focus, you know, that's like his main focus. And when you focus on something, you don't really, not necessarily that you don't see nothing else, but it's like, you know, that's everything else is not in focus. It's like, you know, it's there, but you just straight path, you know, doing what you gotta do, you know.
Yeah,
focusing on the Most High, then that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's look at Proverbs 11, 5 and 6. Proverbs 11, verses 5 and 6.
It says, the righteousness of the perfect makes his way straight, but his own wrongness, the wrong one falls. False. The righteousness of the straight ones deliver them, but the treacherous are caught by greed.
Okay, so when we think about this, right, the righteousness of the perfect makes his way straight, right? When we're able to, first of all, when we think about the idea of the perfect, right, the righteousness of the perfect, that word perfect there is probably let's see, tamim, right? The entire or the whole or complete without blemish. So that one who's walking in righteousness, his ways are made to be straight, right? And so there is kind of a continuity when we're able to remain on the path, right? And to remain perfect or clean, right? Or morally upright, right? But by his own wrongness, the wrong one falls. So it's almost kind of a basically the idea of, reaping what you sow. If you're walking in righteousness, your ways are going to be made straight, period. Right? But in wrongness, the wrong one falls. Verse 6 is the same way. The righteous of the straight one delivers them. But the treacherous are caught by greed, which kind of is treachery. It probably could say that treacherous are caught by treacherousness. Right? The things that you're doing, those things are going to kind of follow through for you. And so again, we look back at Yaakov, where he is, looking towards the Most High and trusting in the way that the Most High is directing him. And in spite of the fact that he's, receiving this kind of, shady kind of dealings with his father-in-law, he's able to maintain his ways about him, and he is prospering, as it's going. Right. I think that, focus is a excellent way to think about it. When you think about focus, especially you being this kind of, I'm just gonna call you a photographer. That's what you are.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so when you have this focus, right, you're able to hone in on this thing that you're dealing with, and then the things around it kind of are blurry, like they're insignificant. But that thing that you're focused in on, that thing is clear, right? When you're dealing with focus. And so it don't matter what's going along. If you got that portrait view going on, right? And you're focused on the Most High, what's going on in the peripheral is just the peripheral. Right. And so you're just focusing on that one thing, is where there literally could be all kinds of things going on all around, but you're focused in on the Most High. And that's a excellent example of what we see with Yaakov over here, which kind of can explain how he's sitting up here talking about the fact that Laban is looking at him in a way that he wasn't looking at him before, because really he's just focusing on the Most High the whole time, and he's not really dealing with the fact that Laban has been dealing with him in a certain way. It's not kind of it's not a thing. So we've got another verse over here. Let's see here. We gotta go to this version. Let's look at wisdom of Solomon 9. Let's see here. Let's look at wisdom chapter 9 and verse 11.
For she knoweth and understandeth all things, for she shall lead me soberly in my doings and preserve me in her power.
Okay, very good. She is wisdom. She is wisdom, for wisdom knows and understands all things. And wisdom shall lead me soberly in my doings and preserve me in her power. And so that's, that goes along with what we're talking about, because when we think about wisdom, wisdom really is the mind of the Almighty, right? And when we're operating in wisdom, right? When we're operating in the mind of the Almighty, we're able to know and understand all things and deal with things the way that those things need to be dealt with. Right? We're talking about the idea of knowing and understanding all things. It's not really kind of this omniscient kind of a situation where you literally know everything. But the thought is that you're able to go through life and deal with life situations the way that those situations need to be dealt with. Right? And wisdom shall lead me soberly in my doings. Right? And so, when we look at what's going on with Yaakov, we're able to see that is his reality. The Most High is able to lead Yaakov in his doings and show him how he's able to go and be in his existence that he has over there, with his stepfather. I mean, with his father-in-law, and he's able to maintain and get through and prosper even, and have this, as we saw, this kind of this secret knowledge that he's doing over here, and causing this agreement that they made to be something that is advantageous to himself. I feel like when we look at this, in one way we can look at it and see where it seems like it's Yaakov in his kind of Yaakov ways over here. But I'm not sure if I can really say that necessarily when we look at, again, when we think back to in chapter 31 of Genesis in verse 9, where it says that, so Elohim has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. This knowledge that he received, it seems as if he received it from the Most High. The Most High is the one who tells him about these things and has him go and do these things. As where we can look at it kind of, from another way and maybe say that he's doing this kind of a sneaky thing that he's doing, but I'm not sure if we can call it that when it's the Most High that's kind of giving him this knowledge in order to follow this thing through. And especially in the light of these principles that we deal in when we look at these verses, in terms of this idea of having one's concentration be on the Most High. He is the one that's directing your paths. He's trying to be and do the things that are right, and he's not always receiving what's right from Laban, but in his pursuits, the Most High seems is blessing him in spite of what it is that Laban is doing to him. Okay, let's go back to Genesis 31 and read verses 10 down through 13. Let me pull this back up over here. Genesis 31, starting at verse 10. Let me go back to this other version, starting at verse 10. Let's read that.
10:31.
Yes, 10 to verse 13.
To 13?
Yes.
Okay. It says, and it came to be at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and looked in a dream, and I saw the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked, speckled, and molted. And the messenger of Elohim spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift up your eyes now and see all the rams which leap on the flocks. On the flocks are streaked and speckled and molted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the El of Bethel, where you anointed the standing column, and where you made a vow to me. Now rise up and get out of this land and return to the land of your relatives.
Okay, very good. So let's see over here, verse 12 at the end. It says, "For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you." Right? This is what the messenger of Elohim is saying, right? I have seen all that Laban is doing to you, right? And so he sees this thing in this vision from the Most High, this whole speckled and streaked thing, right? This is thing that the Most High, this is knowledge that the Most High is giving them, right? And so when we look over here, we see that again, in spite of the fact that Laban is indeed doing these things to him, right? Without a shadow of a doubt. We can see it. The angel of the Most High can see it. Yaakov's not acknowledging it, but we know that he sees it because he did talk about the whole changing up the wages 10 times. He knows that it's going on, but it's not kind of a thing where he's knocked off of his situation as a result of it. Mm-hmm. But we know that, again, in spite of all of these things, he's able to go ahead and do what the Most High would have for him to do in spite of all this. And we're able to see that he's able to maintain a level of righteousness in spite of what's going on with him, right? And so, when we look at, being able to gain from the actions of Yaakov, we want to be able to look at this as an example and see that, this is how we want to be able to move, to no matter what, be able to maintain our righteousness in spite of the things that's going on around us and to us, against us. Because when we're able to concentrate on the Most High and let the Most High be our focus, the Most High is going to bring blessings to us and actually guide us through these things that are against us, these adversities, and our enemies, even, right? We're able to see the way that Laban has treated Yaakov. We're able to look and see that, without a doubt, we could sit up here and talk about all the things, right? Where he literally mixed up the wives and, literally lied about, who he was going to give to Yaakov. When we think about how this part kind of all goes down, it doesn't really seem as if Yaakov was actually free to go at any point. Like, why did he have to even go to? Why was there like a discussion about him having to go away? Like, it wasn't that it doesn't seem as if he was just free to go whenever he wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like he was always kind of under contract with Laban, where he had to make sure that it was all right in order to leave. And then when we look at this thing with him changing the wages 10 times, it's interesting because when we look at this, I wanted to look at this because this whole idea of 10 actually is an interesting thing because there's places we look in the scriptures where 10 is not actually 10. It's kind of like this endless thing. Let's look at Deuteronomy 23. I'm gonna look at Deuteronomy 23 and 3 as an example over here. Deuteronomy Devarim 23 and 3. Read that.
An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Yahweh, even a 10th generation of them shall not ever enter the assembly of Yahweh.
Okay, so over here it says it puts a cap on this thing. It seemingly puts a cap on this thing with the Amorites and the Moabites not entering the assembly unto the 10th generation, where it seems like 10 generations inside of 10 generations is not good. Like they can't come in, but seemingly maybe 11th generation is good. But when we look at Nehemiah, look at Nehemiah 13 and verses 1. Read that.
It says, on that day was read from the book of Moshe in the hearing of the people, and in it was found written that an Ammonite and Moabite should not come into the assembly of Elohim forever.
So over in Deuteronomy 23 and 3, it seems as if it says, even a 10th generation of them shall not ever enter into the assembly of the Most High, where it's kind of giving you this thing where it seems as if it's saying that 10 is the cutoff point. But when you look at Nehemiah, the way that they're looking at it, it seems the way that they're looking at it, that the Ammonite and the Moabite is never able to come.
Mm-hmm.
Because this thing with this idea, with this 10, seems to be like code for a lot and possibly an endless amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of code for forever, where it's never an acceptable thing. And so when we look over at Yaakov, where he's saying that Laban switched up his wages 10 times, he could be talking about 10 literal times, or he literally could be saying that all you do is switch up my wages. Like you just always doing it, right? That's just how you roll, right?
Yeah.
And so we can look at that kind of two different ways, right? Because what from the accounts, we can't necessarily see the 10 times. We can see a couple times, but we can't literally count the 10. But what we can do is see that Laban is consistently inconsistent, right? And so when we look at that, that kind of goes along with this idea of the way that this number 10 is kind of used in scripture, where, especially when talking about the 10 generations, is really giving you this thought of like this unforeseeable amount of time, 10 generations. And so again, when we look at that, we look at the fact that this angel of the Most High is looking at that and seeing the way that he's being treated, right? And he's telling Yaakov, it's time for you to go. Just go and go back, get up out of this land and return to the land of your. He's not even. It's interesting because these are his relatives over here. But he's saying go back to the land of your relatives, but he's referring to, um, you know, the land of promise. It's more about the land than it is actually the relatives, because these these are his relatives, right? Okay, let's go back to Bereshit 31, and let's read from 14 to 19. 14 down through 19.
And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, is there yet any portion, inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches. I'm reading the wrong version. My bad. We got up there. I can read it. 15. I'll start 15. And we are not reckoned by him as strangers, for he has sold us, and also entirely consumed for silver. For all the wealth which Elohim has taken from our father is ours and our children's. Now then, do whatever Elohim has told you. So Jacob rose and put his sons and his wives on camels, and he drove off all his livestock and his possessions which he had acquired, his property of his livestock, in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Yitzchak in the land of Canaan. And when Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole the house idols that were her father's.
Okay, so something interesting goes on over here with Rachel as they're leaving, right? It says that she stole the house idols that were her father's. It says that she stolen the images. Let's look at this over here. The teraphim. This is plural, perhaps from this root over here that is a healer. Teraphim, singular or plural, a family idol. Idols, idolatry, imagery, teraphim. So it's saying that this teraphim is the plural version of Rapha, which means to mend or to cure, to heal, repair, thoroughly make whole. So we have, it's interesting that this kind of, this is translated as, King James just says images. This version of scriptures talks about it as being this house idols. And when we look at the Hebrew, is giving you this thing which could actually be an actual name for these idols, but the name that it goes to, the thing that it's actually doing, is this kind of this healing God, right? This curing God. This God that kind of this little trinket or whatever that brings that's meant to bring healing to the possessors of it, right? And so it's interesting that at this point in the situation, right, we have Rachel, who is, you know, dealing with these idols. Um, I guess, when you think about, um, these things, even though we see that Yaakov went to Laban, his relatives, in order to find his wife in the first place, we know that the Most High told Abraham from the beginning to leave all of his family members in the first place and go and to this place that he would show him. If it was possible, I would say, for for all of them to have went with Abraham in the first place, um, it would have been so. But we know that the Most High chose Abraham specifically because he knew that Abraham would teach his children the laws, statutes, and commands of the Most High, as opposed to those other ones who he left, who he very well could have chosen but didn't, for the same reasons that they wouldn't do it, or that they would teach their children, but they would teach them in the ways that they were already moving it, which they obviously did, right? Because Laban is, generation down from these people. But when we look over at forever losing my cursor. We look at Joshua. Look at Joshua 24:2. Let's see what that says. Joshua 24:2. What's that say?
And Yeshua said to all the people, thus said Yahweh Elohim of Israel, long ago your fathers dwelt beyond the river Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, and they served other mighty ones.
Okay, so we look and see where this is a thing that they did. This is a thing that they did that the Most High took Abraham away from, right? He took him away from all of those things because, of course, it's contrary to him. But they, obviously still had some of these things. Otherwise, Rachel wouldn't have nothing to sit up here and steal in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's interesting that we see this thing going on over here, but it's almost expected because of the fact that, again, Abraham, if those people were living the way that the Most High would have for them to have been living, there wouldn't have been no need for them to leave in the first place, right? And so we see, again, this thing going on with Rachel outside of the knowledge of Yaakov. But I think it gives us another kind of a reason for the way that Laban is, right? Because there must be a disconnect with Laban and the will and the ways of the Most High, if he even has these idols and things in his possession. Mm-hmm. Right, so it gives us kind of some insight into the why of Laban. He's on the outside. He got idols and things that he looks to. These are the things that he teaches to his children, because Rachel thought enough to go and take those things, right? And so we see all these things going on. Let's go back and look at verse. Let's go back and look at verse 20. We stopped at 19. Read verse 20 and 21 there.
It says, and Yaakov deceived Laban, the Aramean, because he did not inform him that he was about to flee. And he fled with all that he had. And he rose up and passed over the river and headed toward the mountains of Gilead.
Okay, again, so this is I thought this was interesting when we look at verse 20 where it says that Yaakov deceived Laban. Why would it use that over there? Why would it say that word, deceive? When we come down here, King James says, and Yaakov stole away unawares to Laban. This word here is ganab to thieve, literally or figuratively by implication, to deceive, carry away, secretly bring, steal away, to get by stealth. When we look at this here, let's do this. Let's just do this real quick. Let's look at this real quick. Let's see here. What's this? What's this? That's ganab right there. Ganab. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not lo ganab. What that say? Lo ganab. But that's what he did with his own self. He basically stole himself from Laban. Right? I mean, you can't take something. You can't be stealing unless it's something else, someone else's, right? That's what stealing is, thievery. But we're talking about his own self, though.
Right.
So again, when we look at this whole idea, where it's interesting that the scriptures decide to say deceived over there. And when we think about this idea of stealing away, I think it helps us more to understand the dynamic of the relationship that they had over here. Because he wasn't free to go. He wasn't able to just get up and go. I'm saying in regards to the relationship that they had with each other. Because he literally had to go without Laban knowing. Well, he felt like he had to go anyway, right? So, this is we can't look at Yaakov kind of in a negative light in what's going on over here in terms of Yaakov deceiving Laban. I think it's better to look at this when we look at this whole idea of ganab is the fact of him secretly going, him going without knowledge. I would say it's better than thinking about it in terms of this deceiving as if he's doing a wrong thing, because he was clearly being mistreated. And so when we think about the idea of a servant being mistreated from a principle standpoint, the Most High don't have for you to mistreat your servants, right? And so he allows in Torah for that mistreated servant to be able to go and find solace somewhere else, right? And so the Most High literally told him, "You go. It's time for you to go to the place that I've given to your father." So even if we just leave it at that, the Most High said for him to go. So how could that be something that's wrong? It can't be. The Most High is the one who literally told him to go.
Right.
And so the idea here, I think, is the fact that there's stealth involved, right? There's the fact that he did this and Laban didn't know about it, not as if he was doing something that was wrong, right? Just that idea of the secretness, him leaving, and Laban didn't know.
Right.
Not that he's doing something wrong, because again, the Most High told him to do it. So we just have to remember that, I would say. But also, let's see. I want to keep going. I want to get back to the idol thing, but I want to read down some more. Let's read down some more. Let's see. Let's read from 22 down through 35. 22. Let me put the screen back over real quick.
It says,
go ahead.
And on the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Then he took his brothers with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey. And he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. But in the dream, by night, Elohim came to Laban the Aramean and said to him, "Guard yourself that you do not speak to Jacob, either good or evil." Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban, with his brothers, pitched in the mountains of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done, that you have deceived me and driven my daughters off like captives taken with the sword? When did you flee secretly and deceive me and not inform me? And I would have sent you away with joy and songs, with tambourine and lyre. You did not allow me to kiss my sons and daughters. Now you have been foolish to do this. It is in the power of my hand to do evil to you, but the Elohim of your father spoke to me last night, saying, Guard yourself that you do not speak to your code, either good or evil. And now you have gone because you greatly love this house. But why did you steal my mighty ones? And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Lest you tear your daughters away from me. With whomever you find your mighty ones, do not let him live. In the presence of our brothers, see for yourself what is with me and take it for you. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen him. And Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tents of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And he came out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Keep going.
Yeah, to 35.
Okay. Now Rachel had taken the house idols and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. And Laban searched about all the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my master that I am unable to rise before you, for the way of women is with me. And he searched, but did not find the house idols.
Okay, so if we go back and look over here, if we go back to Um, 24. Go back to 24. It says, then the thing that the Most High came and said to Laban was to guard yourself, to keep yourself, that you do not speak to Yaakov good or evil. It seems like that means he wasn't supposed to say nothing to him, don't it? If I can't say nothing good or bad to you, good or evil, what could I say at all?
Yeah.
I don't really know what I could say if I can't say nothing good and I can't say nothing evil. Am I supposed to say anything? I don't even know. It don't seem like you shouldn't have nothing to say. He knew it was from the Most High, but it's interesting that the way he says it, he says that he heard from the Elohim of your fathers. Of your father. What verse is that he said that in? Verse 29. It is in the power of my hand to do evil to you. I don't know if he's supposed to say that. If he's supposed to say, I'm able to do something evil to you. It's in my power to do it. But the Elohim of your father spoke to me last night saying, don't speak either good or evil. So to me, I feel like he's in violation. Laban is. But I also feel like the fact that the Most High came to him in the dream was something that was able to temper him to a place where he wasn't going to do evil to Yaakov, where he potentially was going to. Like when he mounted up his people to go after him, like what was he planning on doing? Just to have a talk with him?
Right. Yeah.
I feel like he may not have obeyed the Most High to a T, but at the very minimum, what he did was able to just only have words to say and not do anything. Where the fact that the Most High coming and talking to him at least was able to temper his anger to the point where all he did was just say what he could have did.
Right.
Right. But we also have this whole thing with Rachel, and this whole thing with her taking these idols. Now, I'm saying she probably was lying about what time of month it was. She just was saying that so that he wouldn't check in her and find the idols. It don't say that she was lying. It says what she said, but it seems as if she probably wasn't telling the truth about her monthly situation. She only said that, it seems, to hide these things that she stole. But I'm trying to figure out, why is she doing this? Like, is this just some type of memento, some trinket that she's taking because it's something to remember her father by? Some kind of way that because we know that she did talk about the fact of her not having any inheritance from before. So is she potentially taking this as a form of inheritance? Or is she literally just having this idol and viewing it as an idol, as she's taking it? I'm really not sure if any of those things are legitimate reasons. Because even if we say she was only just taking it just as something to remind her of her family or whatever, we're talking about an idol over here. And these things are not just kind of, just things that we just had. You can't just have these idols and these images in your possession and they be that. And you say, well, I'm not worshiping the thing. I just have it. And we can look at Yaakov and how he thought about the situation. He said, whoever got it, you could deal with them however you need to deal with them. Like he don't have no connection to these things, right? And he understands the weight of having these things, where he literally says, his literal words. What did he say over here? He said in verse 32, whoever you find with your mighty ones, do not let him live. Like to him, even having these things, stealing them or having them is an offense worthy of death. So he got no thoughts for these things. If you got these things in your possession, as far as he's concerned, he said, don't let them live. So he understands that having these things is a serious offense. But Rachel, she don't understand it. Right? She don't understand that having these idols is a thing that's an abomination over here. But again, we see in what's going on, Yaakov, who's maintaining righteousness. He did kind of speak rashly. Just like the one guy where it's like, the first thing I see, I'm going to sacrifice to you. And the first thing that it was. Yeah. Right. So he definitely spoke rashly. He definitely vowed a vow that he wouldn't have been able to get out of had that thing actually been found, of the person who actually took it, who was his most favorite wife. He definitely spoke rashly, but I think the point is that he did maintain his righteousness, even though he wasn't using wisdom, because he didn't know who took the thing, obviously.
Right.
But you can say that he did maintain a level of righteousness throughout. And I think that is the most important point to look at over here, because you have Laban, who is at the point of saying, just by simple fact of you leaving without me knowing, I got the right to do whatever I want to do. But I'm not going to do it. But there's this other thing of somebody stealing my idol, right? So it's almost like he's giving you a pass on the leaving part, but there's still this issue of my idol.
Right.
Where's my stuff at? And Yaakov, who don't even know, is just like, you find it, just do what you gotta do. Like,
right. Yeah, it's like, I ain't taking stuff. You can go search, do what you.
Yeah. And so, I just think that it's interesting when we look at this to be able to. The thing that I think that is most important, again, like I said, is the fact that Yaakov is maybe not using the most wisdom that he should be using, but again, we do see that he is maintaining that level of righteousness. Even we see kind of integrity and equity in the situation, because he's like, somebody's in up here stealing idols. He must be feeling like, what do they got to do with me then?
Right.
If they stealing idols, he's basically saying it don't matter who it is.
Yeah, because I don't got nothing to do with no idols.
Yeah.
So that don't involve me. Do what you got to do. Yeah.
So
He's like, get them away from me if it is.
Yeah,
you know, right?
yeah, which I think is an honorable thing. I think it's an honorable thing, even though we see that, what's going on with it. Even though we know the person who he definitely wouldn't want to be the one who has it is the one who has it. The other thing is, again, is when we look at Rachel in terms of the fact that she took this thing, I think it shows a lot about kind of where we was dealing with her last week in terms of how she was doing or what she wasn't doing, and thinking about, us being able to do the opposite thing that she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
We can, just like we can look at Laban's actions and get a kind of a bird's eye view into his soul, and be able to kind of justify his actions, seeing that he's obviously on the outside to even have these idols. We can actually do the same thing with Rachel, because we see that not only did she, because we know Yaakov, he don't want no parts of these things, but we can see that she, not only did she want to have these things with her, but she stole them. And after the fact, she's lying about stealing them and hiding them. And she got this whole story that's, of deception to kind of secure these things. Right. So we see this kind of a thing that done built up all, at this point with her in as it relates to these idols. And so again, when we look at this situation in its totality, we're able to see kind of inside of each of these peoples and their situations, and who among them was able to kind of maintain that level of righteousness. Another thing, when we look at Laban, whenever he's sitting up there talking about, you leaving and, me, not having an opportunity to kiss my children and send you off with joy. I feel like it's just more of Laban just being Laban, where he's able to say all of these things that sound right, but there's nothing that he's done, in his history to show that that's who he is, because, Yaakov literally he didn't have a choice but to leave in secret like this. It seems as if he didn't have a choice. That's the way that he had to leave.
Yeah.
The stage was set, and he was doing what he had to do. The only way he was able to leave out of there was to leave and Laban not know about it. And that just seems obvious based on the fact that how he did it. Also, based on Laban's reaction. It's interesting that he would say, Laban would sit up here and even say, like, why would you sit up here and sneak away? Like, I just feel like that was just it was just a lie.
Acting like he cared.
Yeah.
Like in terms of his well-being and
he's probably worried about all of the speckled and striped animals that he took.
Right. Yeah.
and and how all the life and family and stuff that he removed from this situation, because they got all these babies at this point, all of this whole little tribe with them.
Yeah.
Laban. Okay, so where do we leave off? 35. Let's keep on going over here. Let's read 36. Let's just finish out. Let's just finish out the chapter because I want to from 36. Let me go back over to here. Oh yeah, 36. Let's read 36 down and then we'll finish up.
It says, and Jacob was wroth with and contended with Laban, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Now that you have searched all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my brothers and your brothers, and let them decide between the two of us. These 20 years have I been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young, and I have not eaten the rams of your sheep. That which was torn by beasts, I did not bring to you. I myself bore the loss of it. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I have served you 14 years for your two daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. Unless the Elohim of my father, the Elohim of Abraham, and the fear of Yitzchak had been with me, you would now have sent me away empty handed. Elohim has seen my affliction and my labor of your hands, labor of my hands, and rendered judgment last night. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock, and all that you see is mine. But what shall I do today to these, my daughters or their children whom they have borne? And now come and let us make a covenant, you and I, and it shall be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a standing column. And Jacob said to his brothers, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there on that on the heap. And Laban called it Yegar Sahudutha, and Jacob called it Gilead or Gilad. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. That is why the name is called Gilad. And Mitzvah, because he said, let Yahweh watch between you and me when we were out of each other's sight. If you uh, afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives beside my daughters, although no man is with us, see Elohim is witness between you and me. And Laban said to Jacob, see this heap, and see this standing column which I have placed between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this standing column is a witness that I do not pass beyond the heap to you, and you do not pass beyond this heap and this standing column to me for evil. The Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Nahor, and the Elohim of their father rightly rule between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Yitzchak. And Jacob slaughtered a slaughtering on the mountain and called his brothers to eat bread. And they ate bread and spent the night on the mountain. And Laban rose up early in the morning and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban left and returned to his place.
Okay, so we look at all of this over here, and we see that they have this meeting over here, and they make this covenant. They say all of these things that they got to say to each other. It's interesting when we see that Yaakov, as he goes through the facts, when he goes through the facts of the matter in terms of how it is that Laban has dealt with him all of this time. Again, we get another picture of the fact that Yaakov is always able to be who he is in terms of having that connection with the Most High and allowing his relationship with Yah to be the thing that strengthens him through all of this bad stuff that's going on. He gets into some of the things like if he has the flock of Laban out and something happens, that comes out of his money. Mm-hmm. Right? No matter what the situation is, if something happens out there while he's out there, he was able to take full responsibility for whatever happened out there with Laban's stuff, where he's just like a caretaker. Mm-hmm. If I go to work and I got one of my boss's tools and I'm using it and it breaks, I don't got to worry about replacing it. It's work. That's their stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm just doing what I do normally. If it breaks, they replace it. Mm-hmm. That's just what happens. I don't got to sit up here and worry about, like, if I'm on a job and their stuff breaks, I'm not responsible for it. Mm-hmm. Yaakov was responsible for all of Laban's stuff. If he's sitting over there and then some wild animal comes and tears up and eats up one of Laban's animals, there's nothing really that he could do about it. Mm-hmm. It's not his fault. He's doing the best that he can. Yeah. But he paid for that, though. And so we see Yaakov went above and beyond what was necessary for Laban. He did over and above everything that he could do. Like, he worked all of these years for his wives. He worked all of these years for something that he's able to walk away with.
20 years, yeah.
20 years he put in. That's crazy. But that's what he did, and he did it, and he was blessed by the Most High. And so I'm saying that when we look at Yaakov, he shows us that we don't have to sit up here and have this picture perfect life in order to actually be blessed by the Most High. The Most High is able to bless us in spite of what's going on in our situations around us. When we're able to keep our focus on the Most High. We have a wonderful example with Yaakov where he's going through all of this stuff. He knows all of the things now. He knows all of the things that Laban has done to him because he recalls it very well. Exactly what was. But at the same time, he's matter of fact. He's stating facts. It's not as if to say, I ain't thinking about you or whatever. Like, he's just stating the facts. This is what it is. This is what you did, in case you forgot. But the Most High is with me, and the Most High is blessing me in spite of all these things that you're sitting up here doing to me. And I'm saying that we have to be able to maintain our situations and be who it is that the Most High has called for us to do in this life that we live, because we in our lives we're gonna come across Laban.
Yeah.
All over the place.
True.
Right? There's Laban's all over the place in our lives, in our everyday walks. And we have to be able to be as Yaakov was, and be able to concentrate on the Most High and not allow our Labans to come and destroy who we are in the Most High. I want to just look at lastly, with that in mind, look at a couple of verses over here. Just to kind of bring it to a close, let's look at First Peter. It's First Peter 2:9. First Peter 2:9.
It says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set apart nation, and a people for a possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light."
Okay, so I think that what I want to focus on here is this part over here. That this is something in Messiah. In Messiah, this is something that happened already for you. He called you out of darkness already in Messiah into this marvelous light. We're talking about in Messiah. And so there's nothing that could change the fact that Yeshua has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So when we face our Laban situations, these are things that we have to be able to be mindful and understand that we are who Yeshua says that we are, not who our Labans tried to say that we are, right? Our situations, our Labans out here is going to try to sit up here and make us feel like we got to sit up here and sneak around and bow down to them. But we have to know without a shadow of a doubt who we are in Messiah. The fact that he did, I'm saying past tense already, do something for us, that when we walk in the ways that he has for us to walk, in our walking, that thing that he did in us is unchangeable. And so we have to remember that, and we can see, even if when we just look at Yaakov, who just had a particular understanding in his heart who the Most High was, and a certain level of faith that he had that was able to get him through. Now, when we think about who we are in Messiah, and the fact that that he has sent for us his Ruach HaKodesh on the inside of us, where he's able to literally transform us and change us on the inside and spiritually empower us to actually live a certain way. It puts us in a position that is far greater than those that preceded us. And I think that this is something that we have to be able to get to the place of understanding. If we can look back at these people who were able to maintain their faith, just kind of from a knowledge standpoint, not necessarily a spiritual standpoint, but just a fact of knowledge and just matter of factness, knowing who the Most High was. They were able to maintain a level of of uprightness. And now on the other side of Messiah, with the spirit that he places inside of those that believe in him, Yeshua puts us in a place that is different from the ones that preceded us. You know, we are left without excuse. We don't have an excuse not to be able to walk victoriously in this life and not be tossed to and fro. Let's read Matthew, just lastly, Matthew 5, 13 through 16.
It says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt becomes tasteless, how shall it be seasoned? For it is no longer of any use, but to be thrown out and to be trodden down by men. You are the light of the world. It is impossible for a city to be hidden on a mountain, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it shines to all those in the house. Let your light shine before men, so that they see your good works and praise your Father who's in the heavens."
Okay, so when we look at this, right? When we look at this and thinking about this in terms of what we were looking at in terms of Yaakov, and Yaakov dealing with, understanding, um, his place and who he is, in spite of his surroundings. It's interesting how Yeshua over here in Matthew talks to his followers and talks about them as being the salt of the earth. This thing that he's talking about is something that's actually not a possibility. It says, "But if the salt becomes tasteless, how shall it be seasoned?" Guess what? Salt is a thing, and its molecular structure calls for it to taste a certain way. And it's going to always be that. Salt is going to always be salt. The only way that it could not be salt is you sit up there and take away molecules from it and change what its molecular structure is. I don't know. They probably got that kind of science to demolecularize salt,
Probably.
but it's not something that's naturally happens. Mm-hmm. If you got salt, it's going to be that.
Salt, yeah.
And so he is giving this message in terms of talking about these people, his followers, being the salt of the earth. That's what you are. You must go around and season. You must go around and be what you were made to be. Otherwise, you're good for nothing. That's what he's basically saying over there. If you are who you say that you are, you have something that you should be doing. And that thing is intrinsically connected to who you are as salt. If you're salt, the only thing you need to be doing is drawing out flavor. Right? Drawing out liquid. That's what salt does. If I sit up here and put salt on something, it's going to draw the liquid out of that thing. Right? That's what we need to be doing. And because of the fact that who we are, the fact that we have been brought out of darkness into this marvelous light, that is the task that we need to be doing. So it don't matter where you take the salt, it's still going to be salt. And so, looking at Jacob, looking at Yaakov, it didn't matter that he went through all of that stuff. He still was a follower of the Most High. And he still was able to walk around in righteousness and walk in integrity, even in the face of potentially losing, the thing that he loved the most. When it came to integrity and walking in righteousness, he said, wherever you find that thing, as you could kill the person who got it. He took a stance on righteousness. Mm-hmm. He remained salt no matter what. He remained light no matter what. Mm-hmm. The place of light is to be a light and to shine and overcome darkness. There's no such thing as darkness overcoming light. If you turn a light on, if there's light, there is no darkness. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting that Yeshua refers to his followers as these two things that just are what they are. You're salt. If you're salt, you season, period. If you're light, you light. That's what you do, period. If you put a lamp under a lampstand, guess what's going to happen? Probably burn up the lampstand and make more light. You know what I mean? So he's giving you the examples of these things that you are, that is literally impossible for you not to be what you are. And so all you can do is just not be who you've been made to be, which goes against nature. It goes against what is. And so, that's the thought that I want to kind of leave this whole thing on, is that we have to at all times be able to just be who we are, and that is light, that is salt, that's followers of Yeshua, and be examples of that wherever we are. It don't matter what happens. In fact, when things happen to us that are these unfavorable situations, it's more of a reason for us to manifest who we are, even more so. It's just another example, right? So that, like it says, like Yeshua said, let your light so shine before men, so that they see what you're doing, they see your good works, and because of them seeing you, they praise your Father who is in the heavens. Okay. Are you got anything you want to add to that?
Straightforward.
Okay. All right. That being said, we're going to end on that note. Okay. All right. So we will say for now, Shabbat Shalom.
Oh.